Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to more Tsukihime. Let's continue.
で、危険度、難易度ともに高いのが自由になった時点で群れから離れてじっと街に潜むやつ。それだけの判断力と適応力があるなら4回転を超えているだろうし、時間さえあれば新しい派閥を作りかねない。
新しい派閥、あの地下の広場みたいなものか。
地下の広場？そんなのあったのね。うん、ロアのコミュニティほどじゃないだろうけど、月に1人の割合で人知れず犠牲者を出すぐらいの。でも代行者がいる限り、そんな真似をしたらすぐに見つかって処理されるわ。だから代行者がいる以上、上級の人はなかなか尻尾を出さないの。あいつらは飛車狩りには便利だけど、同時に上級の人を警戒させる厄介者なのよ。
I see. From the vampire's perspective, Ciel and Noel are like the police. Their presence alone is enough to deter random acts of violence and organized criminal activity. At the end of the day, however, they only address the symptoms. To truly clean the streets is a much more painstaking task.
それじゃあ、今から行くところは吸血鬼が集まっている隠れ家なのか。
ええ、確証は取れていないけど、それはシキがいればはっきりするわ。それよりシキ、ロアの棺がどこにあったのか聞かないの？
What a peculiar thing to bring up.
別にいいよ。もう型がついたんなら興味はないし、俺には関係のない話だし。
そうなんだ。シキの学校の地下にあったんだよって驚かそうと思ったのにな。
Arkway pouts disappointedly.
いや待て、そりゃ驚くよ。吸血鬼のボスのねぐらがうちの学校の地下だったって。
ええ、上手に隠されてたけど、そこはほら繊細かつ緻密な操作で見つけちゃった。
なぜ疑問符が差し込まれる。
Arkway's explanation is all kinds of suspicious. But that aside, Roa's lair was underneath my school. Although Arkway says she's taking care of it, it's impossible to not be shaken.
シキ、どうしたの？怖い顔をして。
いや、親玉の住処が学校の地下にあったのなら、うちの生徒たちが犠牲になっていたかもしれない。
それはないと思うけど、本体が眠る棺は最後の隠れ家だから、その周辺で食事なんて取らないわ。下手に血の匂いを残したら代行者にたどられてしまうでしょ。
そっか、自分の家の玄関で事件を起こすようなものだもんな。
そうそう、元凶の膝元では異常は起きない。これ人でも人間でも共通の隠蔽法でしょ。
That makes me feel a little better. Arkway takes the lead with an easy stride. She's so relaxed it's hard to believe she's on her way to a vampire hideout. As for me, I feel nervous, but not scared. Has my victory against Blob just made me complacent? Or have I actually gotten a little braver? Maybe a little of both? Whatever the case, I'm glad I'm not shaking at least. Arkway's sneeze pulls me out of my reverie. I'm about to ask if vampires can feel the cold, but then I recall the fight with Blob. Of course they do. She may be tougher than a human, but I've seen her bleed, not to mention in pain, more than once.
そのミニスカが原因か。寒いのならこれ着るか？
I take my jacket off and offer it to Arkway.
いいの？やったー！ちょっとの間だけ借りるね。
Arkway puts on my jacket and prances ahead, twirling in circles. Despite her sneeze, Arkway is the picture of health, a flower in full bloom. But I shouldn't keep staring. If I'm not careful, I just might fall for her.
なんだそれ。 ここまで惚れっぽかったのか俺。
Shaking my head, I tear my eyes away from Arcwade. The quiet residential area is just on the other side of the train tracks. I can't afford to be getting distracted with the vampire hideout so close. The hideout turns out to be right in the middle of the neighborhood. A typical 4-story apartment complex. Nothing out of the ordinary. There look to be 4 apartments per floor, with lights visible in most of their windows.
このマンションがそうなのか。
ええ、それをあなたで確かめるの。シキ、ここでメガネを外して、あの建物の周りを見て。
メガネを外してって、なんで？
その方が確実だから。私は人間と人間じゃないものの気配を感じ取れる。あなたは生者と死者の違いが視覚情報として読み取れる。索敵方法は大いに越したことはないでしょ。これは明日からのテストも兼ねているわ。シキが私と行動するということは、その目で街を見るということだから。
Arquade's explanation makes sense. Plus, I'm the one who agreed to help, so there's no reason for me to decline. In the 7 years since I got these glasses, I've never once walked the streets without them on. Looking at inanimate objects is enough to give me a headache, so it's not hard to imagine what seeing the lines on every passerby would do to me. But as of a few days ago, everything has changed. Now I know what hell looks like. After the horrors I saw on the ground, I can survive a headache or two.
メガネを外すよ。それで型がつくなら安いもんだ。
I look at the lines. The strain it puts on my brain instantly makes me nauseous. This place seems wrong. There's nothing unusual about the lines running across the building, but it feels somehow lifeless. There's something unnatural about the cold glare of the interior lights, about the strangely concentrated lines of death scrawled across the woman entering through the door.
そう、やっぱり当たりね。
Instead of going to the entrance of the apartment complex, Arcade heads down the slope leading to the underground garage. The garage is guarded by a metal shutter.
このシャッター、人よけと消臭の結界がかかってる。それもロアが消えたことで薄れているけど。
Bending down, she places her hands under the shutter. Is she really gonna pull the shutter up by...
シキ、このシャッター切れる？
そりゃ切れるけど、いいのか？
ええ、私よりシキが敵に。無理やり開けると警報が鳴るでしょ。
She does have a point. Arcade is pretty good at keeping her cool under pressure. I crawl along the line of the shutter. Metal meets concrete with a clatter. I peer into the pitch black through the opening I just cut.
なんだこの匂い。
Like a bunch of dead carcasses. A foul stench hits my nostrils. The garage reeks of rotting meat and rancid blood. Yep. Dead bodies abound. Oh, I see several skirming clusters of lines within. The sounds of the shutter being sliced open seems to have caught their attention. Going by the lines, there are 4. No, 5.
5体もいる。いや、それより気づかれてる。あいつらやる気だぞ、アルクエイド。
I look back to see no trace of her. She must have vanished while I was busy cutting the shutter. And now I'm in a fight for my life with no way out. I can't back down. I can't even look back. The moment I take my eyes off them, I'll become their prey. Red cracks splinter my vision, like a shattered mirror, like a puzzle with its pieces scattered. The lines of death squirm into my eyeballs and etch themselves on my brain. I'm an idiot. I was so confident in myself, I didn't even bother making the slightest semblance of a plan. And I'm gonna die for it. Right here, right now. That half-rotten corpse is going to squash my head like a block of tofu. I'm an idiot. I let surviving the catacombs go to my head, and forgot that I'm just me. So now, with my patchwork humanity stripped away, all that's left is my true self, naked and bare. My body moves before my mind can follow. I dismantle them without hesitation. It feels so familiar. The smell of blood, the flesh parting with no resistance. I like that how that's his first memory too, of him killing Arcade. In the midst of this carnage, a sight I once tried to forget floods my mind so vividly I can taste it. I resume breathing. A sharp headache snaps me out of my dizziness. 1 minute has passed. 5 bodies worth of dismembered parts are littered around me like garbage.
見ちゃった。すごいんだ。本気になった式って。
Thanks for the help, Ark.
Arcade.
I mean, I know she's weakened and all that, but I mean, these were like low-tier zombies. Blinking through my headache and delirium, I look back. Arcade reappears, making her way to me through the pool of blood. The scattered chunks of flesh turn to ash and vanish in the wind. The only thing left is a pool of blood, thick and dark like oil.
でも無茶は禁物よ。ほら、早くメガネをかけて。そのままだと倒れちゃうでしょ。
そうだな。ありがとう。
I put my glasses back on and stuff my knife into my pocket. The smell of blood is still making me queasy, but my headache quickly subsides.
死ぬかと思った。じゃなくて。話が違うぞ、アルクエイド。なんだっていなくなるんだよ、お前は。
あら、協力するってこういうことでしょ。まさか私にだけ戦わせて自分は何もしないつもりだったの？あなたは。
いや、それはそうだけど。
I'm unable to refute her logic. Getting involved with a vampire means diving headfirst into danger. It's my own fault for forgetting that. Well, I mean, she could have assisted, you know?
確かに、俺は気が抜けてた。それは認める。けど、それなら事前にそうと言ってくれ。お前なんか意地が悪くなってないか。
ええ、楽しんだのは事実よ。四季の魔眼がどれだけすごいのか自分の目できちんと確かめたかったから。
テストってそういうことかよ。はいはい。じゃあ結果はどうでしたか、お姫様。
うん、文句なし。あなたの目は破格の魔眼よ。その希少価値は言葉では言い表せないぐらい。
それはよかった。お眼鏡にかなって光栄ですとも。
I punctuate my retort with a sigh. Even if she's paying me an honest compliment, it's hard to be happy about it. Being praised for my ability to kill people is like confirmation that I'm good for nothing else.
でも その目と同じぐらいあなた自身もおかしな人ね。直前まで逃げ腰だったのにナイフを握って殺すと決めた途端迷いなく死者を解体するんだもの。そういうところ私と似ているのかも。なのに人間よりも人間らしいなんてすごく不思議。
I'm not sure what emotion I hear in her words. Affection? Admiration? Compassion? It came out of nowhere, and I can't find a fitting response.
ねえ、ドアの後始末が終わったら私と一緒に行かない？よくわからないけど一人で帰るの嫌になっちゃった。
Arkway trots away a few steps, then swings around to face me. I answer without thinking.
あのな、行くってどこにだよ。まさかお前の故郷じゃないだろうな。
Her sincerity goes over my head, and my reply comes out sharp.
何その嫌そうな顔。私一応お姫様だよ。玉の腰乗ってみない？
お断りだ。そんな爆弾みたいな腰に乗れるか、バカ。
なんか今すごく侮辱された気がするんですけど。
Half-heartedly trying to quell Arkway's protests, I take another look around the parking lot. There don't seem to be any more vampires around. If Roa was still alive, we probably would have been attacked by the entire apartment complex, but these were all that remained. The other inhabitants were probably the rank 1 and 2 low-level dead apostles that CL mentioned, mere corpses now that their sire is dead.
もうここには誰もいなそうだな。外に出よう、アルクエイド。さすがに血の匂いがきつい。
I call out to Arkwade and we leave the garage. There's no telling for how many years these vampires have been festering in the darkness, but now the light is shining in. Outside, I fill my lungs with fresh air. Though this job is done, I don't feel much sense of accomplishment. The hunt for Roa's minions isn't over yet, and, more pressingly, what are we supposed to do about the rest of the apartment?
どうするんだ、アルクエイド。他に吸血鬼がいないとしても、ここはねぐらの一つなんだろう。もしかしたら中に隠れている奴がいるかもしれないし、念のために調べるか。
もちろん、しっかり後始末はするわ。じゃあ式はちょっと離れてて。
Arkwade turns back to the apartment complex and raises her left hand in the air. Then...
No!
Oh, sure. You could have just done that. With a great rumbling, the apartment complex collapses in an instant, smooshed like a cake by some gigantic unseen hand.
どう？式みたいな希少性はないけど、私だってすごいでしょ？
Arkwade smiles proudly.
そう。
見直してくれた？というか、驚いた？
そうか、バカだったな、お前！
I grab Arquade's hand and start running. The magnitude of her power doesn't surprise me. After all, she's strong enough to protect the whole town from Blob's snowstorm. Just please have some common sense.
なんで逃げるの？もう危険はなくなったのに。
あんな騒ぎを起こしたら人が集まってくるだろう。ちょっとは考えろ、バカ女。
それはそうよね。私ったらうっかりさん？
Unbelievable.
すごいな。分かっててやったのか。
Things have taken an unnecessary turn for the worse. Finding the flow of people coming out to investigate the source of the noise, we run to the empty park. No heavy machinery or explosives precipitated this destruction. The building was crushed by a controlled natural phenomenon by a minute adjustment to the laws of nature. Half in shock and half in rage, she listens to the collapse. The product of millennia of human advancement. A symbol of modern civilization razed to the ground on a fleeting whim. Her habit flutters in the wind as she takes in the scene. The executor watches on from 20 meters above the ground. Her duty is the extermination of the dead apostles running rampant around town, but that has already been dealt with. She hunted down the last of the rank 4 dead apostles last night. All that remains is to find and destroy their sire's coffin, their feeding ground. Although as of a few moments ago, the latter is no longer an issue.
空想具現化を惜しげもなく使うなんて。何を考えているんですか、あの吸血鬼は。
She mutters to herself in frustration. The executor has long since been observing Arkway Brunstad in silence, but after what she has just witnessed, she can no longer contain her disdain.
彼も彼です。弱みでも握られているんでしょうか。
She turns her eyes to the young man running with Arkway's hand in his. That only serves to confirm her irritation. Is it the vampire she resents? Or is it the sight of the two of them together? The executor cannot tell. Oh, jealousy, of course. Once they vanish in the direction of the park, she shifts her attention back to the demolished apartment complex. Already a group of nearby residents have gathered at the scene, drawn by a commotion. Several police cars peels off from the main street in front of the station, heading this way.
迷宮入りの案件がまた一つ増えましたね。事後処理はあなたの方でこなしてくれるのですか、司祭代行。
The executor continues facing ahead, but her words are directed at the darkness behind her.
なんだてめえ、気づいてんならそう言えってな。声をかけるタイミングがつかめなかったじゃねえか。
A small whistle of wind cuts through the air. Like the executor standing on her high perch, the voice belongs to another who lords over the skies. Only he needs no foothold. The 12-year-old acting prelate, Mario Gallobestino, perches behind the executor on thin air.
ノエル先生からあなたのことは聞いています。互いに自己紹介は必要ありませんね。
まあな、てめえの経歴は嫌ってほど目を通した。今さら何を聞くまでもねえ。んで、あれの処理の話な。じき俺の使えねえ部下が駆けつけて話をつけるんで、てめえはとっとと消えていいぜ。下の野獣馬どもにいちいち暗示をかける必要はねえよ。
Looking back down, she sees a number of black cars arriving on the scene after the police. In them are Mario's very own inspectors, bought and paid for. Within the hour, they have spun this inexplicable catastrophe into a simple, unfortunate accident.
それは結構。こちらも手間が省けます。ですが、いいのですか？ノエル先生には厳しく詰問したと聞きますが。
埋葬機関の犬が権力になびく玉かよ。大体殺されても値を上げないって話じゃねえかてめえ。マグロ相手に拷問するほど暇じゃねえしな。てめえらの単独行動には目をつぶってやるよ。それとも任意同行するか、おい。
構いませんよ。司祭代行の言葉は尊重します。ただし、それが正式な手続きによるものならですが。
Mario does not answer, but his lips curl in amusement.
話が早くて助かるぜ。さすが歴戦の強者だな、代行者。というわけで、てめえとの情報交換はなしだ。それとも借りを作っておくか？
It's amazing this kid's only 12.
必要ありません。こちらはこちらの責務を。あなたはあなたの職務を果たしてください、マリオ。
へえ、俺はてっきりここで殺し合いになると思ったんだがね。邪魔者は事前に潰すのがてめえらの流儀だ。 大司祭直下の俺は目の上のコブじゃないのかい？
Yeah, face, man. The young boy's aggressive tone is a clear provocation. The executor shrugs it off without so much as looking over her shoulder.
そうですね。ただの司祭代行ならそれもあり得たでしょう。ですがあなたなら例外です。いえ、ラウレンティスの人間であれば誰であれ信用に値します。あなたは目先の利益で功を焦りはしないでしょう。
はあ？なんだそれ、信用に値するだ。権力に尻尾は振らねえてめえがたった今背筋主義にでも目覚めたか？いやまあ確かに金ほど信用しやすい見返りはねえけどな。は
あ、顔は似ていますが兄上とは正反対ですね。あなたは心の底から失望しました。
ああ、ちょっと待てよ尻でか女。あのクソ兄貴がなんだって？
When was CL ever fat?
私はあなたの兄を知っています。以前一度だけ同じ任務に就いたことがあるので。ラウレンティス枢機卿の息子ということで周囲からは誤解されていましたが、彼は尊敬に値する人物でした。その彼が言ったのです。もし弟たちに会うことがあったらなるべく手加減してやってくれ。ひねくれているが根は青臭い正義感だと。
なんだそれみっともねえ。死ねばいいってんだあのクソ兄貴。使い捨てのメス犬一匹に何媚び売ってやがるラウレンティスの面汚しが。
ええ、その一点であなたたちは信用できます。父上の名誉を守る、そのためにあなたたちは行動している。ここで私を捕獲するより他に優先すべきことがあるのでしょう。
なんだそりゃ、親父の名誉を守る。そんなことはあのクソ兄貴がほざきやがったのか？
いいえ、そういったことは一度も。とにかく無口な方だったので、ただ共に過ごして私がそう感じただけの話です。
これだから20歳そこそこのガキは半端に理想に燃えてやがるから始末に追えねえ。
昔の話ですよ。あれから6年、今はお父上の補佐に勤めているのでは。彼のことです。立派な人物になっているでしょう。
As the executor reminisces about the past, her audience looks on with cold eyes. The acting prelate grinds his teeth.
いい、しらけた。もうてめえとは交渉なんざしてやらねえ。勝手に一人で土地狂ってろ。どうせロア狙いだろ。こっちも同じだが、用があるのは奴の攻防だけだ。本体はてめえに任せてやるよ。
The wind whistles as Mario takes his leave. His previous standoffish bluster is nowhere to be seen. The executor must have gotten under his skin. Okay, this whole time I thought Arkway killed Roa, but I guess he's in his own coffin.
待ちなさい、司祭代行。一件だけあなたに頼みたいことがありました。それを条件にここから見逃してあげましょう。
ああ？
Mario's fingers stop. He makes the turn around to tell the executor off, only to realize that her throat was not an idle one. Just one solitary string holds him aloft. The executor has stood surrounded by over 700 spirit threads for minutes now, until a moment ago, when she incinerated all but one in total silence.
魔術栄唱はなかったな。指先から魔力を流しただけで燃やしやがったか。嘘みてえな生成量だ。波の魔術師の何百倍だ。とっくに化け物だな、大公社シエル。まあそうでもなけりゃ イデアブラッドを2つも3つも保持していねえか。
おしゃべりは結構。最後の1本も燃やしますか？
待てやめろ。転落死なんて間抜けな死に方は冗談でも勘弁だ。ってもう燃えてる燃えてる。相変わらず容赦ねえなてめえ。もう仕方ねえ。聞くだけは聞いてやるよ。要件を言ってみな。
私の同僚の処遇についてです。すでにあなたは彼女に会っています。なら私からの提案は理解できると思いますが。
The executor's tone has grown cold. She speaks in a calm voice that imparts only fact, but her implication is plain. The executor knows well is at her limit, both mentally and in terms of ability. She has nothing else to offer.
ああ、そういうこと。人事異動は俺の領分だ。片手間でいいなら請け負ってやるけどよ。いいのか？俺に預けるってことは好き勝手に使い潰すってことだぜ。
構いません。できれば近日中に手続きを。彼女はブローブ・アルハンゲリに血を吸われてもいます。問題ないレベルですが、万が一ということもあります。あなたの権限で汚染審査を行ってください。
You wait till now to finally get her examined. You should have done that from the get-go.
万が一ね。まあプラシーボ効果ってのもあるしな。俺から見てもありゃガタガタだ。早いとこ全身診察してやるとするか。それでてめえがこっちの邪魔をしなくなるってんなら安い買い物だ。
With that, their business is concluded. The boy departs, this time without interruption. Only the executor remains, her habit fluttering in the wind. She looks down upon the scene of destruction once more, and breathes a small sigh. Gasping for air, we make it to the park. Luckily, we managed to escape unnoticed. I mean, or so you think, but nope. I finally stopped to rest, panting like a dog. As for the princess by my side,
ごめんなさい。四季の体のこと、まだよく考えていなかった。
that's new. She actually expressed remorse. Maybe I'm too much of a pushover, but I can't stand to see her so forlorn.
いいえ、結果的には誰にも見つからなかったし。俺もちょっと言い過ぎた。アルクエイドがぶっ飛んでるのは今に始まったことじゃないしな。だからそんなに気にしないでくれ。
そう四季が怒ってないなら私も嬉しいけど。
ああ、怒ってない怒ってない。でもやりすぎなのは本当だぞ。次から大事を起こすときはせめて一声かけてからにしてくれ。
任せて。協力無比のコンビだものね。
Oh god, I never saw her look like that before. That's 10 times as terrifying as the other pictures I've seen of her when she's looking sadistic. Terrifying? Do you mean to say terrific? My consciousness flickers as my anemia seizes its chance. My knees buckle. It feels like the contents of my head are spilling out.
四季
As Arkway rushes towards me, I raise a hand to tell I'm okay.
少し疲れたみたいだ。ベンチに座れば落ち着くよ。
I lower myself onto a nearby bench and catch my breath. Is she worried about me?
そっか、死の線を見すぎたのね。四季、あなたは自分の目をどこまで理解しているの？
With that, she adopts the mannerisms of a teacher and launches into a lecture about my eyes. According to Arkwade, my eyes don't exactly see death, but rather decipher death. The lines are simply where death is exposed. The origin of those lines, the point, is death itself. Seeing the lines requires going far beyond the limits of human perception and cognition. So overusing this ability will cause the brain to crash before the eyes. Due to the strain, it must be used in moderation.
なんだそりゃ。自分で俺を振り回しておいて。
Arquade's selfishness is almost comical. She knows full well that my mystic eyes are the only thing I can offer. How can she order me to help her, and then warn me not to overuse them? Her logic doesn't add up. She continues rambling about things I barely understand. Miss Arkwade is quite the lecturer. I nod and nod as I listen. I've actually pretty much recovered already, but I opt not to cut her off and just stare at her instead. She looked so frail just a moment ago, but now she's practically glowing with energy.
ちょっと聞いてるの？私、四季は危ないって話をしているのよ。笑うところじゃないでしょ。
She's seriously angry at me, but it's not like I meant to laugh, and she's the one who got carried away with all the newfound zeal.
なんだよ、偉そうに。ブローブにやられた時は、そっちも危なかったくせに。
あの時はあの時でしょ。何よ、四季は私が苦しんでいた方がいいの？
No way. I don't ever want to see her like that again.
ああ、バランス的にお前は苦しんでるぐらいでちょうどいい。ま、
We're not talking about balance here. For me personally, what I really want to say is...
元気なアルクエイドを見ているのは嬉しい。お前はそのままが一番だと思うよ。
If I could have one wish, it'd be to see her smile like that forever. Wait, why is she charging at me?
待て、イノシシかお前。
How come in CL's route she's more affectionate here than she was in her own route? That's what's so funny about this. I scramble to get up knowing there's no way I'll be able to dodge her. But as I stand, Arkwade skids to a halt in front of me and grasps my hands in hers.
私も同じ。やっぱり一緒だね、私たち。
I go up as I take in the purity of her smile. Thinking to reciprocate, I open my mouth to reply. But a head-splitting pain shoots through my brain at the worst possible moment. I only save myself from collapsing by grabbing onto the bench. I take a few deep breaths and ride out the dizziness. Fortunately, there was just one flash of pain. I should be able to get back up.
悪い。体力、まだ戻ってなかった。
Did someone do that, or was that part of his thing?
アルクエイドの言う通り、魔眼の使いすぎってやつだな。
Arkwade doesn't reply. She just gasps, like she's seen something she could scarcely believe.
そうなんだ。それは大変ね、四季。
She lets out a giggle, then skips back to the center of the park square. The night grows later. Arkwade has much less to say, but I can tell she's in a good mood. So much so that I have to wonder why. We pass the time discussing our next move. Before I know it, it's past midnight.
もう日付が変わっちゃったね。今夜はここでお別れにしましょう。明日もよろしくね、四季。
まあ、一日で終わることじゃないしな。待ち合わせ場所はここで、時間は今日と同じでいいか？
ええ、 一日も待つのは退屈だけど、式にはまだ式の生活があるものね。邪魔はできないわ。
Arkway flashes me a brisk smile, then leaps clean out of the park. She sure knows how to make an exit.
って感心してる場合じゃない。俺も早く戻らないと。
What the hell was that headache of his, though? I thought someone caused that. If I leave my room empty for too long, someone's gonna realize I've snuck out. I rush back to the mansion as fast as I can, knowing there's a good chance I'm already too late. Yeah, history knows. It's well past midnight by now. The lights in the mansion are all out. I bypass the main entrance and slip in through the service door at the west wing. When I left, I used the same exit, and luckily, it's still unlocked. Hisui and Kohaku's rooms are on the west wing, so I tiptoe my way in to avoid waking them. A sigh of relief escapes my lips as I sit down on the bed. All the walking I've done tonight must have exhausted me. Feels like the mattress is sucking me in. Again, I'm working with Arkwade. Fate just keeps dragging me back into her blast radius.
仕方ないよな。放っておけないんだから。
Or maybe I don't want to. Maybe I'm drawn to her in all her beauty and all her inhumanity. I feel a brief twinge of pain in my head, like being stabbed with a needle. That's odd. This headache felt different from the ones I've had before. Rather than a pang of pain, it was a pang of guilt. Like I'm rebuking myself for being so foolish as to think of her as beautiful. Slowly, I close my eyes. Sleep takes me over. A giant hand pulling my body and my consciousness into a deep darkness. As I fall helplessly into darkness, I try to recall why that would be foolish, but my thoughts disintegrate before I can. I can't sleep. I must have too much on my mind. Too many things to think about. Closing my eyes throws my thoughts into sharper relief. And now I'm awake. I won't be able to fall back asleep anytime soon. Giving up, I roll out of bed. Might as well do some reading. I put on my jacket to stay warm and search through my belongings. Unfortunately, I can only find books that I've already read. But I'm just killing time anyway, so I don't need anything new. I moved to the adjoining sunroom, holding a book I've read many times over. It's nice to have a room just for reading. Sinking into the chair, I flip through the pages. Oh, here we go. More vampire lore. The first emotion I ever felt, of all things, was pity. Not anger, not despair. It seemed that everything I laid my eyes upon was miserable. The most miserable of all, of course, being myself. He was born at the end of the 15th century. The child of a wealthy family, he received the best education money could buy, and grew up healthy in both mind and body. A benevolent soul, he reviled corruption, avoiding any and all vices. Those around him regarded him as a child of prodigy, and believed without a doubt that he would bring them great prosperity. However, he defied his parents' wishes for him to inherit their lands, instead setting his eyes on the doors to the house of God. In this age, the corruption of the church was at its height. The greed of the powerful had infected its roots, and the fruit had nearly fallen from the tree. His parents were disappointed, but nonetheless gave him their blessing to follow his aspirations. in the hope perhaps that he could excise the corruption that had spread throughout the land. By all rights, it would be impossible for a single man with no patron to change the world, but he passed through many cities, befriended many people, watched many new developments come to fruition. Throughout all this, he arrived at the same single conclusion. Human beings are magnificent. Of all the Lord's creations, they are just superior. They may be weak, frail, noisy, irredeemable creatures, but their sole redeeming quality outweighs all their ugliness. For as long as humans exist, they are compelled to search for meaning. In this, he saw the Lord's design. He met new people on a near daily basis. Residents of the city, visitors to the city, he welcomed them all. He found joy in learning about the life of every stranger he spoke with. In each and every person's life, there is a truth to be learned. Many of those lives were unremarkable. Many were even reprehensible, but none without meaning. He endeavored to know as many humans as he could. His compatriots laughed at him, saying 10 people was enough. His teachers chided him, bidding to stop at 100. The clergy praised him, encouraging him to know 10,000. Only one foresaw the hell that lay ahead of him, his closest friend. Just as his friend had warned around the time he had carefully recorded 1,000 lives, he ran up against a wall. That is not to say that he lost heart because they were uninteresting or inconsequential. If anything, it was the opposite. He wanted to know more. 1,000 people, 2,000 people would not suffice. He must collect more and more truths, but still would not be enough. It would never be close to enough. Even should he befriend someone new every day by the age of 60, he would still not have met everyone in the city. But even worse, humanity was growing in number. The world would only keep expanding. New possibilities would be born with every passing day. Why must humans be afforded so little time? I have a better question. Why is he referring to people as humans? He too is a human, right? Or is this a vampire we're reading about? He looked back on his life and saw that from the day he was born, he had never known personal happiness. Those around him called him a child prodigy, but they were mistaken. He was a man of exceedingly average talent. If people's abilities were quantified numerically, the total value of his would be no different to anyone else's. However, his parameters would display a dramatic skew. He was far less concerned with the inner workings of people than he was with those of the world. While he was fascinated with the aggregate, he possessed no capacity to love the individual. While he strove tirelessly for a higher understanding, he lacked any worldly ambition. While he looked constantly to the future, he was unable to appreciate the present. In other words, he was extraordinarily inhuman. But even then, he remained a man of incomparable virtue. He loved the values that humans held dear, the lives led by the virtuous. His faith was more fervent than anyone else's. While he was unable to reform the religious world by himself, it would only be fair to concede that he did inspire change. For while his love of humanity stifled his love for people, and while he eventually strayed from the path, for a time, he was nothing less than a living saint. Man, that's a little bit contradicting though. This story dates from before he began his study, when he was yet a child. His mind was mature, which is why, even as a child, he refused to accept that any mystery he encountered lay beyond his reach. Almost could not read that too, by the way. For the boy who understood the whole of society, there was no such thing. Rain, clouds, even ghosts all had rational explanations. To him, the only true mystery was that which mankind as a whole could not decipher. That which others would accept as just the way it is. The unexplained was the last refuge of his childish innocence. Death is a death, and his fervor for it shone like a star, brighter by far than the ordinary passions of youth. Consequently,
私は今でも覚えている。父の目を盗んで一夜だけの旅に出たあの時間を高く高く何の支えもなく私を見つめていたあの石の不思議さ
The white disk gleaming in the sky, the clouds that obscured it. What is that? What's its purpose? How does it exist? Anticipation, intrigue, fear. These were the feelings that welled up inside him when faced with something he could not reach. They took root in his breast like a shining star. That was his beginning, and his impetus. Oh, how grave is sin! Oh, how deep is foolishness! For he prayed to the Lord above to one day understand all the universe. In the years to come, he would learn the truth, that the grand understanding to which he had dedicated his life had already been discovered by his forebears. That in the name of oppression, the house of God hoarded the world's knowledge behind its doors. Mathematics, astronomy, geology, history, architecture, economics, medicine, agriculture, and alchemy, later to be known as science. In this era, the house of God was but an intellectual graveyard, securing all of man's advances under the lock and key, even as it touted itself as the world's greatest educational institution. Primates created tools. People created civilization. Scholars studied the stars and devised ways to observe them. They surmised the vastness of the universe long before they ever crafted wings to lift them off the ground. They had long known the nature of the rock he saw in the sky that night. Not even the innermost workings of the earth were barred to them. Every possible question had already been answered. Every mystery had already been solved. As a nameless philosopher once said, man will spend his next 1,000 years proving what he has already surmised. All the world would be rendered comprehensible. All the universe would be given meaning. But this understanding brought him no joy. Instead, he was gripped by fear and anger beyond description. It was only because I had already given up that I was able to accept it. But what now? What am I to do with this knowledge? There will come a day when humans will know everything. Yet this body of mine will expire long before it comes to pass. Compared to the vastness of the world, one human life is cruelly short. He dedicated his life to knowing everything, but would die knowing nothing. He searched for the meaning of human life and learned that it had none. Any person should understand what a pitiable conclusion that is. In that moment, he first knew the terror of death, the fear of death, the fear of atrophy. I fear a world without an end. Even after acquiring so much knowledge, I still know nothing. It is not my own annihilation that frightens me. What truly terrifies me is losing my purpose. I must devise a new approach. Eternity does not yet exist on this earth. This world is still growing, still changing. All I can do is wait until it is complete. He stepped off the path. He turned his back on the stairway to heaven. What he wished for, what he sought, was simple. He wanted to know everything. And to do that, he needed unlimited time. Oh no. How ironic. The man who feared the unlimited growth of humans pursued unlimited time as a solution. Well, if you're gonna leave, you picked a good time. Gutenberg's machine is gonna hit us as hard as it hits the Association. To say nothing of the Reformation, we'll both have a rough go at things for some time.